if I can get my arm in the right hole. Oh my god.
For fun.
Wait, I want to show you, do like a little fashion show for you. Okay.
Okay, so this is
You see
podcast
this?
and fashion show.
Yeah, this is
Take take the insert out if you can. I like the blazer.
well, I'm like, it's your podcast. You gotta tell me how to look.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
is
this
that better?
looks great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know what? Now you look like the president of the United
Wait, I look like what? What did you say?
the president of the United States.
No, if you want me to look like a president, let me show you this double-breasted suit that oh wait, no, that's the one that's at the tailor. Wait. Okay, so some of these things are at the tailor. But
Okay.
oh, but this one is really fun too. It's like it's a what's it called? Asymmetric jacket.
Oh yeah, okay. And does it have the sleeves that is like loose?
Yeah, they like fold
Wait,
up
I
like
have the
this.
similar thing.
Okay, well, I'll
Nice.
bring it. I'll bring it when I
Okay, yeah.
visit you in Toronto.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, now you actually look like yeah, you're gonna go and give your presidential speech. Can you hear me?
I'm just in my childhood bedroom, which is on the opposite side of the
Okay.
internet. And so it can be a little slow, but if we need to, I can kick my dad out of the office, which is right next to the router. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me just
Okay.
talk to my dad and then I'll
Okay.
come back. Thank you. All
Okay.
right.
Okay, it's
Is
much
this
better.
better?
Yeah, significantly. Okay.
Okay, so I just kicked my dad out of the office. So I'm trying to think what's gonna be the best
Right.
background in here.
The light has to be in front of you, not behind you. That's the trick.
Okay, I think there's a lamp here. Let me see this. Is this a good background?
I didn't put much, well, not any, much makeup or anything. It's just the light in front of me. That's it.
I wanna, like look
Yeah,
good.
yeah, look good. Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Okay, you look great now.
okay. Is it
Okay.
too bright?
Um, I mean, is it hurting your eyes? By the way, all of this is recording.
Better not use this.
Actually, you look fine. Yeah. I mean, and also that's just you, right?
Okay.
Okay, do one thing. Turn it on. Keep it just a little bit far away. This is
Yeah.
fine. This is fine. You know, you have your pink lips to compensate for the overly white.
Should I go put on some red lipstick?
Then you know what? You were she had like short hair, and she was like she always had red lips on. Okay, okay, I'll tell you when I remember. Anyway.
Madonna? Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, yes, yes. Exactly.
My God.
Great unconventional beauty. That's what she was, right? Like,
Yeah. So I just need to dye my hair blonde and then I can be Marilyn Monroe.
you see how I don't even know how to phrase this sentence. So correct me in phrasing the sentence. Like you're part of the LGBTQ community, right? Is that how people
Yes.
say it?
Yes.
Okay. And then also like, you being Jewish, like as in just as part of your introduction, so people know you from that perspective as well. The one thing that stood out for me the most is how our friendship carried us through different phases of our early career and how that is such an underrated thing that people don't realize and how we like and also we could talk about how we put a lot of effort into our friendship into making it what it is and some of those minute things. What do you think?
I mean, I'm up for all of it, honestly.
Okay.
When I think about you and I's relationship and like what your podcast is about, I think honestly the power of friendship and just like the power of how we've stayed connected, plus how we both have been on these kind of separate but parallel career journeys, I think is the most telling part of like our story. I don't know.
Okay.
And then we obviously have like so many other things that we could talk about. Like, yeah, I think so. I think honestly, I would love to, if you could prompt me on the whole
Okay.
concept of managing up also and kind of like being like that sort of like indirect kind of power that you have in the type of roles that we're in where we're, advising or like for me, it's like I'm managing a product and I need to influence other people, and
Yeah.
it's like the elements from the book, like how to win friends and influence people, it's
Yeah.
like all those types of things. And I think then how gender roles tie into it and like the
Mm.
power that sometimes the power dynamics can be more trickier to navigate. Like, and so
Yeah.
I think that's if
Okay.
the more I mean, however you wanna talk about it, but, like,
Mhm.
for me, I think that's how I think about it and how I think I would want to talk about it with someone who's, like, in their
Right.
early career, and, like, give them advice on it.
Right. So like leadership and influence, right?
Right, and influencing as a female leader versus as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
leader. Yeah.
Yeah.
One, two, three, four.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Early Career Podcast. This is your host and friend, Priyanka Mangali, and I'm really excited today because I have a very special guest for all of you who is here today to talk about some of her challenges, her struggles, her experience as an early career individual. She's none other than my best friend, Corey Salzer. Corey, welcome to the Early Career Podcast.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. I'm just so excited that you've been talking about this podcast for so many years and that it's coming about, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I mean, for all of you listening, Corey is one of the most emotionally intelligent people that I know. And every time we have a conversation, one of our infamous 4 hour long conversations, I always take away something extremely meaningful from it that I take into my life and implement and learn from. Not only is she someone who's extremely emotionally intelligent, she also has a successful career in tech, which I'm really excited to share with all of you her journey. And so, yeah, with that, Corey, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to all of us?
Yeah, wow. I feel so honored that you described me in that way, and I honestly feel the same way about you too. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we've had such an amazing friendship. And when we were working together, we really gravitated towards each other. So, yeah. So I am Corey Salzer. I'm currently a product manager at Parent Square, which is an ed tech company, education technology company, and my career has been in tech in a number of different roles, and I've navigated transitions. I started out more in the software engineering space, did several internships while I was in college in software engineering. And then when I graduated from college, I was in a program with Priyanka to become an AWS solutions architect and did that role for about 4 years before I switched into product management at Amazon Web Services. And I've always been passionate about education and education technology. I had some really amazing opportunities to do tutoring and other types of activities in the education space throughout my career. I found that I'm just someone that really thrives on working on mission driven products. And especially for me now in my role as a product manager, just making decisions, it feels so much more fulfilling to be making decisions that I'm really excited about the impact that I'm having. So I'm really excited to be here, talk about how I've navigated those transitions and also just the friendship that Priyanka and I have had over the years and how that's been such a rooting and amazing influence on my life and something that I think we would love to share with you.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Corey. And um, for those of you who don't know, Corey and I, we go way back. What,
Almost
eight
like
years?
10, yeah,
Eight
like I
eight
think it's
years.
been it was
Yeah, it
2017.
feels longer. It feels longer than it is. Probably it feels like
Yeah.
20 years. We know each other for or probably our whole life, right? But yeah, 2017, so that's like 8 years old. Uh, it's an 8-year-old friendship, and it's not something I think we anticipated, right? It's just something that we grew into, and we just kept going, and then we eventually just realized that, yeah, I guess we're close friends.
Honestly, I was so intimidated by you when I first met you.
What?
I
This
was
is news
like,
to me. What?
yeah, no, I felt like I you were just so dynamic and put together, and I was like, I would be honored to be friends with this
Oh
person. I
my
don't know
god!
if she's gonna be friends with
You
me.
know, I was so not put together at that time when you went. I was like freaking out inside. I got into Amazon, like that was my first job. So I was just like, what am I doing in this company, in such an amazing company? And this is like my first job. Yeah. So, but you know what? That is interesting. You thought that way of me, but then the way I thought of myself was just the exact opposite, right? And I think that is actually a great starting point because sometimes people, especially when we're in our early career, we tend to think that everyone else has it good, or everyone knows what they're doing except for us, right? Or except for me. And this is a perfect example which was not programmed. We didn't plan it, right? To suggest that, like, what we always think less of our own selves than what other people think of us. And so I really appreciate that you thought that way of me. Not that I wanted to intimidate you, but
Well, yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on like an amazing topic of just like this concept of imposter syndrome too. And we talked about that like when we were first at Amazon. I think all of us felt that imposter syndrome of like, how did I get here? Do I belong here? Is this the room that I should be in? And I think we were all kind of like faking it till we made it a little bit, which
yeah.
we can talk more about, like of just like that being necessary sometimes, just when early in your career when you're in these types of roles. But I felt like you were built for that stage though a little bit. Like you kind of have that presence that it's very calming as well as just all the presentations you just killed it. I was just like, "Oh my gosh."
Oh my God. And you know what? It's funny because I thought that you were just so intelligent and you were just like this person I could never even like stand on the same stage with.
What?
Yeah, yeah. And that's so, you see how and I think like this speaks volumes to how each of us have our own strengths and our own skills naturally. And see, these are natural skills, what you're referring to and what I'm referring to. And it's just about us identifying those skills over time, right? Because, even with this podcast, for example, like it's not like I wanted to do it, but I didn't think I could for the longest time. And then I realized that, you know what? I guess I'd be good at it. And it was just me having to accept that, you know? And the minute I accepted that, even with all its flaws, I mean, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, the funniest part is every time I upload a podcast video, I don't hear myself. Like, I don't, because it's just super cringy for me to hear myself because it takes me back to the time where I feel like I'm not good enough or I could have said this better or that, and I realized then that it's never going to be perfect, but you just got to say what you got to say and got to keep making the impact that you want to keep making, right? Um, and so I guess like w- I think imposter syndrome can only be beaten by maybe some sense of confidence. What do you think? Like, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? How did you deal with it then when you started your career at AWS? And what would you suggest people do or think about themselves when they are in the intense moment of feeling like they suck?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great loaded question. I think like one of the ways that I think about imposter syndrome also is the fact that you're feeling imposter syndrome means that you're challenging yourself, which is a good feeling. So I think just kind of reframing it to be like, I am growing right now and I'm putting myself in a position that I've maybe never been in before, or I don't have that muscle memory or that comfort and familiarity with, and that can be a good thing. And for me personally, like I've talked to you a lot about this too, but just like I have a background in sports, like growing up and especially being on really competitive teams in high school. Like I was on.
And that's intimidating too.
See, I don't try to bring it up normally.
That's why you're casually slipping it in right now. Just, yeah, it's part of sports that I did this.
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. I in my job now, I don't even tell people because I don't
Oh,
want people to feel intimidated. And then one of my coworkers actually last week was talking about the NCAA volleyball tournament and like how she's really a big fan of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And I was just like, oh yeah, I like played volleyball and casually like my team won the state championship like 3 out of 4 years that I was in high school. But I don't tell people unless they're like really into volleyball because it's like not necessary. But in
but
this conversation.
I feel like you should. I feel like, I mean, even if it is intimidating, it's the good kind. Like you said, it's the one that makes you feel like, wait, if I'm intimidated by that, that means maybe I want to do that, or maybe I want to do something like that. You know,
Yeah. Well, I think going back to like both you and I, we tend to be like overachievers in certain things, like in certain areas of our lives. And I think you don't need to be an overachiever to not have imposter syndrome. But I think having that familiarity with that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have this goal or I have this task ahead of me that I have no idea how I'm going to get there. Like, or for me, it was like I was on in tryouts or volleyball teams where I was like, I could totally not make the team. I have no idea. Just that muscle of putting yourself in those positions where you're at the risk of failure or the risk of messing up and then pushing through it. I think you get this intrinsic confidence in yourself that, hey, I can thrive. I can do this under pressure. And it's almost like it's a little bit of like a meditative technique. And I use visualization, especially. Like that was something that my volleyball coaches always taught me of like, visualize yourself doing whatever it is successfully. Like before a volleyball game, I was like, okay, I'm visualizing myself with my passing platform out, serve receiving the toughest serve I could ever get. And I use that technique a lot too in work situations where I'm visualizing myself like I'm talking to the CTO of this crazy private equity company, which like that was one of my first clients when I was an AWS solutions architect. And I have no like just kind of visualizing yourself being in the room with that person. You're getting a question that you have, and then you're visualizing yourself answering that question beautifully. That like it's a way to trick your mind into getting that familiarity with the situation before you step into the room. And I think that's a really great technique that they teach too in like Toastmasters or different public speaking presentations of like visualize yourself in the room successfully succeeding at whatever it is you're doing.
That's a great point. But how do you then stop your mind from overthinking about that visualization? Because sometimes I do that, but then I also then tend to think of all the failure scenarios of like what could go wrong. Then how do you like control your mind?
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's like there's a fine line between disaster planning and successful visualization. And like I think that it's yeah, you need to make sure that your visualizations are a positive spin and you're not and then also time boxing them, I think is a great technique that I've used of like, okay, I'm only gonna do this for like 10 minutes and then I'm gonna like then I'm fine. I'm not gonna think about it. And
What
that's harder.
what's Thai boxing? That's one more thing that I don't know that is intimidating.
I think, like I mean, it's just time boxing is, like, setting a time limit for how long you're
Okay.
gonna spend thinking about something. You do time boxing, like, with meditation and other things.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just might not know the word for it. Like, yeah, but it's just making sure that you're not, like, doing this for, like, 3 hours and then you're, like, all of a sudden in an
I
anxiety
mean,
spin.
I do. I actually, I'm really bad then at time boxing because I'll just do like I can't keep time frames for different things, or even if I do, I can't commit. Like I won't keep my own commitments, and so that's something actually I'm working on right now is to like just keep my own commitments because I think that one of the hardest things, and this ties into like discipline, right? Like how much can you keep your promises to your own self, right?
Yeah, that's hard.
That's the hardest thing for me, like, because I struggle to go to the gym. I know this is off topic, but I struggle to go to the gym, and every day, I literally wear my gym clothes and sit for work because otherwise I'm not gonna go. So I think discipline, I think for me, discipline really helped with also some of my challenges when I was in my early first 5 years because I would work really hard and I would be very committed to a certain purpose. And I was very disciplined to 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 succeed in that purpose or that goal that I had created. And I think over time, because I was so disciplined about that particular goal that I had, like I wanted to write this document or I had this big idea that I wanted to push. And I just stayed so consistent and disciplined. And I didn't even realize I was doing that, of course, at that time. It's just natural. It just came natural to me at that time. But I realize now that it is something that you need to do intentionally. Discipline and consistency can actually sometimes help you with some of those imposter syndrome challenges where, if you're feeling something, just also like thinking of what is that one task that you can do for the day that can make you feel accomplished, that is taking you towards your goal to then not gonna get into or not gonna drown into that imposter syndrome or put you back, right? So I think that can be very discipline and consistency can be very powerful. So I know we talked about imposter syndrome and obviously tying into self doubt and things like that. You also mentioned that you're a product manager and that's something that you love doing. Can you tell us a little bit about that role and also because I mean that's one of my dream roles is to be a product manager. I don't know how long it will be, but it is right now. And can you tell us about like what it is, what the role entails, but also what it is like to be a product manager as a woman in tech in general, and what kind of challenges you face?
Yeah, that's also a great loaded question. So I'll just tell you my experience with product management and like what I've learned about the role. And honestly, it's such an evolving role right now, especially with how AI is impacting the role and companies do product management differently. So it's really like that's one of the things I've learned is it's not consistent at every company. In general, product managers are some might say like the CEO of their product. So you're responsible for the execution and building and planning and coordination involved with bringing a product to life and launching it and making sure that it's meeting the needs of your users. That's like the easiest way to simplify it. But a lot of times in reality, that's not what the job actually is. So there's also different flavors of product management. There's technical product managers, which is what I was at AWS before I became a product manager at Parent Square, which I'm still pretty technical, but my role is technically not a technical product manager. So that's like another caveat, like technical, too many technicals.
Yeah.
Technical. Then there's also program managers. So at big companies, you might see like a program manager role versus a product manager role. And so one thing to notice is that program managers are often more responsible for the execution and project management of a product versus product managers are more thinking about the planning and the business side and marketing and all of the meeting the customer needs and doing customer research, planning customer pilots, all those types of things. So you might want to look out for that. And these are all the questions that you can ask as part of an interview too, if you're looking at product management roles of knowing like what's the difference or how does your company do product management. So to answer your question specifically, I know you asked me like, what is my job at Parents?
Uh,
Yeah, so I actually just got like in the last week moved into a different role too. So it's for the past 2.5 years that I've been at Parent Square. I have been basically responsible for all the data integrations and different platform areas of Parent Square. So Parent Square, we provide communication services for schools. So think about like attendance notifications, two-way text messaging between teachers, parents, administrators, and parents, notifications about buses, all the different types of communication, school websites, for example. So my job is making sure that we have all the data and all the security and all the platform type product areas that are needed to power all of Parent Square. And we serve over 20 million students. So it's a big responsibility and one that was a huge shift where at AWS I was working on a very specific product area that was much higher market cap, like in the billions of dollars with new commercial region launches. And then now I'm working in a really broad product area that we our revenue is like almost the 10th of that of the size of like the product area that I was working on. So it's like very different mentality that I had to very quickly adjust to of like, okay, I'm gonna be like doing the team is gonna be working on a lot of things that may only make us like $1,000 here, $1,000 there. And like that's fine because we're in ed tech and we have to serve students everywhere.
yeah,
Um,
right. It's like a different between like a true startup kind of mentality and some, sort of a larger corporation or company like Amazon is, right?
mhm.
I'm sure that you would have had your own challenges with like maybe communicating ideas and different things that you may have, or maybe having disagreements with, people, especially in a product management space. Of course, there's a lot of people that are highly opinionated, right? And kind of navigating those waters. Like, is it still hard to be a woman in tech and a woman generally in tech and then women specifically in your role? Because
Yeah,
I really want people who are hearing this to know that if they're going through something, then they're not the only ones going through it, that we're also all in the same boat with them.
absolutely. Yeah. So I think one of the things to think about, like as a product manager, you are responsible for influencing all different types of stakeholders. So you're responsible for influencing leadership on why you should be building something or why we shouldn't be building something and how we're building it. You're responsible for influencing sales and how we sell it. You're responsible for influencing marketing. So you're responsible for working with engineering and influencing engineering to build the right things. So you're working with all these teams, and like you're totally right that it is a lot different being a female, or I mean, I identify as she her pronouns or she they pronouns. I think navigating that your gender identity, whatever it is, like in those spaces can be tricky, and especially when you're coming in and you're needing to be very commanding oftentimes, like, or say no. Like, as a product manager, one of the principles that you'll find too is that you say no about 95% of the time, but but you have to actually say no in a way that's, like, part of the job is, like, redirecting that to something else. So you're not you're in my mind, I'm like, I'm saying no, but I'm really just pointing them at a different path or a different solution, and it takes a lot of skill to do that, and you have to there can be pitfalls too as a I've found, like, as a female leader, you it can be tough, and I think, like, I don't know how like, it's hard to pinpoint, like, what specifically is tough. I think one of the things that you'll find or, like, I found is that oftentimes as a product manager, you are failing. Like your product launch might not go well. And that's part of the job too, is that you're really responsible for the ownership of how your product is meeting customer needs. And as women, oftentimes, like there's this whole principle of like, you know, oftentimes female leaders are brought in after calamities or different bad things have happened to clean up the mess. And you have to be careful. I've found that it's not that you get blamed for things, but you oftentimes are doing the work of like 3 people sometimes, and you're, like, covering all of there's an expectation that you're gonna be doing more sometimes than because of especially for me, it's like my emotional intelligence and my capacity for understanding things. I just get put a lot of responsibility on, and so I found, especially compared to my male peers sometimes, and you have to be clear about your boundaries and you have to make sure that you're being protected by your managers and you're being protected by leadership of not making sure that you're not getting like the hard projects that are not going to succeed, or making sure that you're going to be in a position where you're managing that risk of failure in a way that's not going to like reflect poorly on you personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that's I think there's like a term for it. It's called like a note taker, you know? Don't they say don't be a note taker, don't be just a note taker in a meeting. And I think that's what
Mhm.
you're referring to in general, largely, right? Like make sure that you're seen as valuable as just as somebody else that may not be you, or that may be of a different gender. Because I mean, no matter how much we want to believe that uh, you know gender equality exists, it's still like, yeah, in theory, yes, it exists, but in the implementation of it, it's highly debatable whether it exists or not, and to what extent it exists. Because even today I was talking to a female colleague who said that one of her male peers that she works with, he doesn't s- think that she is capable of doing her job because he has a different way of doing something. And so you see, like, but in the other hand, you won't see typically a woman judging a man in the same way, right? We will just think less of ourselves. We won't think that something's wrong with someone else, right? But typically, and this is generational conditioning of how women were made to just sort of like be at home and just kind of cook and clean. And and I know we're getting into like a very different sort of path here, but like, and I know we talked about gender roles as well, and we were debating about that on a previous 4-hour conversation, right? Like,
Yeah.
and and I've been thinking about this, a lot, about like why are women always assumed to be a certain thing? Like, why are so many assumptions put on us? And because we are the ones who really suffer and struggle to come out of those assumptions and labels, to the point where sometimes they just end up becoming our insecurities. We're not actually able to get out of it because we're constantly being put into more and more new labels that come again. And sometimes women, we do this to our own selves too, right? It's not just the other gender. But I do have a sort of a difficult question to ask you, is because, with respect to gender roles, like sometimes people say that, women were nurturers, so we have to, we're best when we're at, when we're taking care of the kids and we're, doing all the sort of domestic tasks at home, and then men are the sort of the providers, so they're the best. And see, because that definition conflicts with the definition of the modern woman, right? Where we want to go to work, where we want to have the same equal seat at the table. We don't want to just be the ones who are nurturers. And we, in fact, even we want partners who are equally nurturers like us, because we don't want to take the full job or responsibility of being a nurturer. I don't know how much you agree or what your opinions are about this, but I'd be very curious.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack with everything that you just said. Like, I would love to go back to also what you're talking about with that situation of like someone judging how you're performing and that the gender dynamics involved. Cause I know you've gone through your own like we've talked about over the years, like I had someone try to tank my first promotion that was like in that type of role. And, you've also had your different situations. And I think that you're right that there's so much to navigate in terms of the gender dynamics of it. So in terms of like navigating interpersonal conflicts like between female and male coworkers or coworkers of where gender biases might be coming out, that I think it really comes down to I think calling it out from the beginning and really focusing on the direct communication with that coworker or that coworker's manager on the facts of the situation and of the objective truth of the situation. Because oftentimes those people too, they're hiding behind their own like
Insecurity.
bias and insecurities like you were talking about. And they're just trying to push their agenda in a system that's favored them for many years. And the sales manager that tried to take my promotion, he was basically like, Corey's not helping the sales team enough with these types of demos and this and this. And I was like, okay, I only have 24 hours a day. Like, what? How? So it's like just coming down to like, okay, is that actually part of my job responsibility? Or is this manager like saying things that I should be doing that he's just implying I should be doing because I'm someone that could do those things? And I think just rooting it back into the objective, and it helps when you're at a company too that has very objective performance standards and leveling guides like Amazon did. But I think also just coming at it of what is this person's job and what are they trying to do and why are they communicating with me in this way? What is their motive? Like, what are they trying to? And then how do you use that against them to persuade them to do what you actually want them to do? Is the other trick that I use, especially when navigating like difficult conversations. Yeah,
Yeah.
gender biases.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point. And, just to double down on that, there'll be times where I would tell my manager that, there might be a bias here playing into the scenario. And I feel like I can feel it. And that's because, sometimes the scenario is created in such a way where there's no way you'd win, right?
Hmm.
And, and then sometimes if you don't know better, you might start blaming your own self and actually end up in a loop of anxiety and possibly depression. And I've heard of people who are in this because they constantly think that something's wrong with them every single day that they wake up and go to work, right? And this is for all of you who feel that way, that sometimes it's not you, it's the system that's created around you. So you need to like take a step back and look at the bigger system and look at, I think something that has really helped me in my life is to think that I'm a bird, because I would like kind of take like a 30,000, foot view of my own life. And I would think of is how problematic is this problem, or, how bad is this situation, and then I start thinking, wait, it doesn't look that bad from up here, you know? And I guess that's what you're alluding to, right? Like you gotta like take a step back and look and realize it's a systemic problem, and it's women, it's people like us who are trying to change these systems, and we are in the middle of that change. So it is going to be uncomfortable, but we all got to do our part to recognize that sometimes it's not about us, sometimes it's a system that's created that's just not favoring us. And the one of the most silliest example of this is the air conditioning in the offices. I don't know about you, but statistically most women feel colder, or their body temperature is like a degree or two lower, or warmer than men, right? So then, but if you think about office areas, obviously it's based on temperatures based on how men want it to be. So I'm not saying that I want the whole building to cater to women, but I'm just stating that as a sort of a silly but realistic example of how uncomfortable I then feel to go into the office building, because it's so freezing cold for me that I literally have to like take a throw or something and sit there. And then my male colleagues are like, "Oh, why are you using a blanket?" Because they don't even know that this is our experience of it, right?
Yeah.
And so
I
even
used to have
communicating that, even with your allies, like your male allies who actually are there to support you, to like let them know that, hey, our experiences are not the same. So I need you to hear me out, and I need you to like understand where I'm coming from when I say this, because my perception of something will not be the same as yours because you're a male and I'm a female.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're bringing up an amazing point about that communication of your experience to the other party that doesn't have that shared experience as a way to change the system. But I also want to add on the fact, like, for me, I take a note from Black women also of just like, sometimes you can't change the system, like, and sometimes it's too much work for one individual to change the system. And so you kind of just have to figure out like what is my capacity for taking on this big challenge of like changing. Are you going to go to the head of the office at Amazon and be like, I need the air conditioner like at a certain temperature? Like, because there's going to be like 500 other examples of like why those types of systemic imbalances or ways that the system is not well built for women in the workplace. And change takes time too. So you kind of have to, I don't know, for me too, like as I take notes from Black women, I also look at my Jewish history of just like you have to figure out how to work in a system that is stacked against you and or is not going to be where you're not the primary person that the system was designed for. And you have to figure out where is your place to say your put your voice out there or try to change the system, and then where you have to be strategic, I guess is the word, like
Yeah,
about
yeah,
how you try to change the system.
yeah. Because also, you don't want to every day wake up and feel like a victim either, right? Like, because I wouldn't advocate for anyone to like play the victim card every day. So, but without playing the victim card, how do you empower yourself to like still try to find ways in the longer term, as you said, strategic way to change, to bring change the right way, right? And I think that itself can be very empowering, and you can use that energy to like help deal with some of the daily struggles in which you may not be able to do much, right? Is that right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Like, I mean, I think that there's like one of the ways that I found to like kind of limit the amount of energy that I have to put into changing the system is also like relying on my male allies to help change the system. And you like finding those allies. Like for me, I always bring it back to this promotion that my sales manager had to take, but it was a lasting.
Seems like it was something that had a impression on you for a long.
It was, like, and honestly, I feel like it comes like, there's other scenarios where it's come back, but it's just a great example. But my manager at the time, I was actually having ACL reconstruction surgery while this was all happening, and I was, like, on some medications,
Okay.
and yeah, and my manager at the time, like, was a great ally, and he was able to like, I told him my experience, what the situation was, and then he was able to advocate on my behalf. And so I've had countless scenarios like in my career where finding those, especially like men in leadership positions that are already in the system and have a powerful voice to advocate on your behalf or put you in a position to be a leader. Like I had an all hands last week at my for my company where in my new role I'm working on kind of a new team, a new concept, and he was like, "Corey, I want you to speak about the team to the whole product engineering design." And just being that person where you can be tapped to be a representative. And that's just a way of like representation changing the system. And, when I'm talking to our engineering and product and design team, like me being who I am and speaking is already like representation in a lot of ways.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, like my manager or my previous manager, he was just one of those people that you're referring to, and like it's like the textbook definition of a great ally and a great manager, of course. But I always told him, I communicated with him my experiences of what I felt, and and then he did his part to then make sure that I felt safe, I felt valued just as anyone else, and that my problems were addressed in the way that I felt them, not in the way that he would feel them or someone else would feel them. But the thing is, like, sometimes we expect people to do this for us, but I would say that we have to do our part in communicating that first. We can't expect the system to just come and just be an ally. You can't expect someone to just naturally be an ally, right? And so you bring up a really good point about communication, where we have to communicate. And so that first step is on us, right? Communicating to the right person about how you feel, but also not blaming somebody. You have to communicate in a constructive way, just sharing your part of the scenario without placing blame. Because then, if you start placing blame, you are actually going to look like the bad person here, right? Like you want to look like a trustworthy person having a problem, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think also just framing it more as a solution oriented way. And I love how you bring it up, like not blaming. I think it can be hard like to focus on the problem, but a lot of times just pointing out the systemic problem that is causing this is a way to also be solutions oriented. Like in my like bringing it back to my promotion, like the systemic problem is that like the sales team didn't have support for a lot of the things that they needed to. And so instead of me being like, why is this guy like yelling, being like, Corey should be doing this, I'm like, well, should we find another team to support this type of work? And so I think just reframing also of back to the system and less and not about how you as the individual fell into the hole of the system that because that you did. And I also just want to clarify too, because I realized I was like talking about how white men being the allies, like there also like there are amazing women allies too, and other types of allies. Like for me, I'm also a part of the LGBTQ community, and just having any sort of representation of those individuals. Like at my company now, we have a lot of women in leadership positions. Like our VP of engineering is a woman, and so leaning on them as well is a great technique. But you just have to keep in mind that they're also overburdened and they're dealing with the system. So sometimes it can be powerful to have two different people that are one that's like in the community and one that's not also saying the same thing. And you just want to make sure that whoever you're communicating the problem to has the right power and influence to influence the leaders to make the decision. Like for me, also in my current role, our VP of customer success is an amazing ally and advocate. And she's well connected to our leadership team and she has a really powerful voice. And so she's not in my direct organization because I'm a part of product engineering and she's in more of the customer facing roles. But she's a great person. If I need to influence people and leaders in my org, they'll listen to her really in certain ways. And so just finding the right people, and sometimes you have to be creative too, of like going outside your direct team and also building relationships with these people in power, which can be intimidating in its own respect sometimes.
Yeah, but also empowering. And I think I couldn't have said it better. Like having just this Creative is the word. I think that's the sort of summarization to this whole topic is just instead of sinking into your own insecurities, just find creative ways to create to one, communicate what you feel, and two, find at like be a solution oriented person, right? Not someone who's just constantly bringing problems to the table. Yeah, you can bring a problem, but then kind of a proposed solution along with it. And it's not that the solution has to be like the best one, right? It just has to be a solution, even if it's the worst solution, just for your manager or just for the people you're talking to know that you're not a problem oriented person, you're a solution oriented person. That's it. Like, it's just for building that trust with the other person. So don't worry about the solution being a great one.
Absolutely. I mean, I like to joke sometimes with my engineers. I'm like, it's like throwing darts at a board. Like, you just got to throw one. Like, it might stick, it might not. And so I love that,
Yeah.
just, it's like, it's a good faith gesture that you're coming, to them with this mindset.
Exactly. And this is kind of building that, what I call as career currency, It's like you're building trust, and it's literally like building currency, or invest, kind of like an investment in your future career, because these are the same people. Once you build trust with them, they're going to vouch for you, and they're going to speak for you in rooms where you will not be there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know we have probably like 10 more minutes or so. So I also wanted to touch on probably one of the most defining aspects of me and you which is our friendship. And the reason I want to bring that up is because, sometimes when I tell people about the importance of friends and friendship, I don't think people really see it, and I don't think it's because friendship is not important. I think it's because I don't think I think people know how to make casual friends, but I don't think everyone understands and knows how to make deep friendships, and also how to nurture those friendships to the point where they can actually become places of peace and calm in your life in times where everything else might be falling apart, right? And so, especially, for me in my early career, when I was 26, between 26 and 30, I mean, even it's not like I'm dying.
I feel like you like sometimes the way you talk, it's like
I'm like an old woman, like a
yeah, you're like,
90-year-old. Yeah,
yeah, it's really, I'm like,
yeah.
Priyanka, you're not that old.
I know. And so over the 8 years of our friendship, Corey, I feel like, you know, we our conversations have been so nurturing for me, and have kind of lifted me out of situations that I may not have told you at that time that, oh my God, Corey, I'm depressed, but I probably was when I called you, and then somehow that conversation got me out of anxiety and out of depression, whatever you want to call it, right? And so, like, we wanted to talk a little bit about that, and talk about like how much hard work friendship actually takes, because sometimes people have complaints about, oh, they didn't call me, so I didn't call them back, or oh, we're now in a long we moved away, so now it doesn't matter. But for us, for one, we were always like, I was in the East Coast and you're on the West Coast, right? And every year we made it a point to meet, and every few months we would make it a point to have our one of our infamous 4-hour long conversation where we would talk about every and that's how our conversations start, right? Okay, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Yeah. I love our conversations.
Right. Yeah.
I also wanna push back a little bit on the way you framed it though as like hard work because and like all of the like logistical like I feel like yeah, you're totally right that like there's no logistical reason why we should have been friends. Like we are like almost we've always been like in either different sides of the country or separate countries, like with you in Canada and me in San Francisco or you in Virginia and it's always been really difficult to make it work. But I think the easy work though for me that's always felt like with you is that I feel like I always like you mentioned it being nurturing. Like I feel like the same way where it's like nourishing for my soul, like whenever we connect and it's like it gives me energy and it rebalances me in a way that's one of the reasons why I feel like we have such a special friendship is like we kind of understand each other and we kind of joke that we like known each other in other lives or like there's like this cosmic connection somehow. And I truly believe that even though I'm like, I don't know the right like phrases and like mysticism to like describe it. But I think honestly, like I'll give an example too of like we've both been through really hard things in the 8 years that we've been friends together. Like, my mom had cancer for several years, and we've gone through challenges with work, and me with some pets, and you with relationships, and me like both of us with relationships at times, and so many, and the way you
Layoff,
navigate
layoffs.
the layoffs. We've both been laid off, and then you going into the pageantry work. Well, I don't know if I'm saying it. I always am
Yeah,
like,
that's right. Yeah.
okay, I'm saying it right. So I think that through it all, I think the thing that makes it easy is we don't have to like schedule things or like feel like there's this pressure to check in. It's like we just kind of have this rhythm of checking in with each other that we can kind of like sense how the other person is doing and what like when you have been laid off earlier this year too, like we talked about how it's like I I texted you and we couldn't talk because we were both too busy, but we just like knew like we were there for each other. And I have had that as well, like where I'm going through a hard time with something and like I just knew that you were there for me, even though we didn't have one of our 4 hour long conversations or we didn't have a trip. But then we've also had times where like I'm telling you about my 30th birthday party a month before and you're like, I'm coming. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. And how we're planning to meet in probably Toronto, right? Next year.
Oh, yeah, because
Right?
I'm
Yeah.
so I'm planning a trip to Philly, and I'm like, "Priyanka, I'm coming to Toronto." Like, I don't
Right.
know when,
Yeah.
but I'm coming. It's like we just kind of, like, invite ourselves over, like, to
Yeah.
things, like
And it's like we somehow naturally create like a trip once a year, right?
yeah.
And you're right, like there's this natural rhythm. And I think that, it's natural, but it's not by luck. I feel like we really worked hard, Corey, at it, and we really put the effort. We really kept each other's trust, right? Sometimes people take each other for granted. And yeah, like I know that you're always there for me and I'm always there for you. But I don't think we ever took that for granted. And I think that was the crux of how it kind of kept going and how we kept building the trust over the years. And, the reason I'm bringing this up and specifically talking about the effort part is that, like, for everyone watching, if you're wondering, how other people just have friends, it's not a coincidence. People really you have to really put an effort into being a good friend. And the reason why that effort, why you even should invest in friendships is because, I think for one, friendships really, I think we're a product of our environment, right? Like if you're around CEOs, you'll tend to like think, I want to start my own company. If you're in the midst of someone who, is always complaining, you're also going to become a complainer. So having good friends creates a good environment for you, a conducive environment for you to grow. And, I think in your early career, in your 20s, we could resort to a lot of distractions and addictions that may not be healthy for us. And so sometimes having good friends can actually take you out of those things, right? And then two, just navigating work life, when needing having someone to vent. Of course, I'm not saying that like just spend all your time venting, but at least having someone to like share what you felt with, and having someone kind of like fight for you, and in that in a way that they say, oh, how can this happen to you, like that's you're awesome, and things like that. And and I don't think we can just rely on like a parents or just a partner or just a sibling. We need like a holistic sense of community where it's not just a family and it's not just a sibling. So having good friends can really kind of take you through so many hurdles that are, kind of intangible when you actually make the friendship. Because when you're making the friendship, it's not going to just be like, okay, next year they're taking you out of anxiety, right? So, I would say that, having good friends really can change your life. Won't you agree with that?
I totally agree. And I love like specifically two words you used of just like community, like the sense of having a community and then also like fighting for your friends. And I think like if you think about like what's the foundation for being able to do that, it's really this like authenticity and openness and generosity. Because I think one thing I noticed too, and like I think you and I have both had, we've had the bar set high with friendship. And it's like, especially in my early 20s, I didn't always have friends that were looking out for my best interests, or they were maybe using my friendship in a way that was, like, more self-serving for them, and they didn't really see me for me, and they didn't really advocate for my best interest. They were more advocating for their best interests, and I think once you learn that sniff test of, like, being able to sniff out, like, this friend is looking out for me in my best interest that is completely outside of themselves, that's really, I think, the core of being able to have that type of connection, and I feel like you and I, we almost had that, like, from the very beginning. It was really special in that way, and I feel like I really saw you, and you were really open with me, even though we were both intimidated by each other apparently at the beginning.
You just found out right now in this podcast.
And I'm all very, like, open. People like to joke with me that they know my whole life story when they like, when I first meet them, but you have to, I've learned too, sometimes I have to be less open and more guarded with myself.
Yeah,
But I think once you have that with someone and it's like you're giving and taking in that in the same way, that's when you can really have that type of like you're fighting for your friends and you can really consider them a part of your community, I believe.
absolutely. But I think the first part or the core element of what you said, or how to achieve that giving and taking, and that the perfect balance of that give and take, right, between the friendship, is from being selfless. I think we both start off with being putting each other first, because if you put yourself first, the other person's instantly going to put themselves first, right? You have to start by putting yourself first, putting the other person first, and that's a mental way of extending a hand first, right? And I think over the years, like, you put me first and I put you first, and that's why we never kind of like um, felt bad, if we weren't able to sometimes make time for each other or whatever it is. Because a lot of friendships break because someone says, "Oh, I'm the one always calling them." It's like, who it doesn't. I think once you have the trust and once you know someone's there for you, who cares who's calling whom, right? It doesn't really matter. And I think, but that came from us both just being selfless as people. So finding, as to your point, initial point, finding the right people, knowing who are going to be there for you, who are naturally givers.
Mhm.
I don't think you can be friends. I don't think you can. Yeah, I don't think you can have a friend who's a taker, because they're going to be constantly taking from you. So I think two givers, can make good friends. And I think it's very important in your early career to do so. So please invest in this time of your life to make friends, make good quality friends, because they can really, I mean, I think if you have a good friend, I don't think you need to listen to this podcast anymore.
No, honestly, true. It's true. And like you said, it takes time, it takes work. And sometimes the easiest way I found to is just like set up that initial one-on-one or call with someone that you like. Maybe there's someone, a coworker or someone that you've met at an event that you think could be a friend. You got like set up that initial call or start feeling out and really ask them questions and really be curious about their life so you can learn more about them and you can show that level of trust and then really see what they can give you in return too and make sure that you're selecting for the right energy and selecting for that type of friendship. And I think I've had some situations where like that first call doesn't result in next call. It's kind of like dating where you're like, you go on a first date, maybe they're a great person, maybe you're a great person, but it's not compatible of like what they can give and what you can give. And so, just keep doing that. Don't get discouraged if it doesn't work out on if the first one doesn't work out, you're like, "Oh my god, I'm never gonna be friends with anyone." Like
Yeah, yeah. It's not, yeah, and that, I guess what you're trying to say is like not to take anything too personally, right? Because
Mhm.
like if something doesn't work out, it's not on you. It's not like an attack on you. It's just sometimes things don't work out, and just taking a very objective approach to everything, right? Career, friendship, life. I think that can really help. I mean, I don't think anyone can do that all the time. I'm certainly not objective all the time, but I think trying to be objective makes you just a little bit better every day, right?
Yeah, well, and I think also just, like, recognizing your own flaws. I'm the same way too, like, I feel like in some of our calls, we're like, "I am having a really crappy day," like, I'm a little, like, pissed a little at something, and it's like, okay, I'm not objective, but just, like, calling that out of being self-aware, I guess, in that way. Also, it's like, you don't need to come in and be this, like, emotionally evolved, objective person all the time, like, and yeah, I think just being easy on yourself too of like, okay, maybe I didn't get enough data from that first conversation because I was like I was tail spinning about some other thing that was happening in my life, or and just keep moving forward, and keep trying to make progress in whatever way you can.
Yeah, I think keep moving forward. That's another good keyword because sometimes when you say stagnant or when you stay in the same place mentally, and that's when you drown again.
hmm Well, bringing it back to your animal references, it's like I think it's Dory from Finding Nemo. She's just like, "Just keep
Yeah,
swimming, just keep swimming."
yeah,
Yeah, like
exactly. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes I'll call my manager for like a evening therapy session. Yeah, I call my manager for. I'm like, this is what's happening, and then he's like, you know what, Priyanka, just go and do a course in machine learning. I'm like, how is that related to this? He's like, no, it's not. That's what I'm saying. It's like, stop thinking about this. So, and it can be true sometimes. Just do something that's productive and meaningful, right? But with that, I guess one last question is to wrap this up is advice that you can give to kind of your younger self. I mean, you're still young, but your even younger self. What would you have done differently knowing now what you know? What advice would you give to your next generation who is probably watching this? Maybe they're in their undergrad, maybe they're in the middle of finding that first job, maybe they are, in the middle of transitioning from a non-tech to a technical career, or maybe they're trying to be a new leader or new manager in tech as a woman. Just putting all these images in your head so that you can visualize what the audience might look like. So what advice, general advice and tips and things would you have for your younger self and for them?
yeah, well, I realized I never said my age also, so I'm 30 years old, and Priyanka came for my 30th birthday party last year.
So I can vouch for that. She's not lying.
She saw the change.
I
Yeah, like, I grew a gray hair or whatever it was.
right, this one, yeah.
No, so I love this question. I actually would bring it back to I feel like something that you and I have discussed so much, and like I has been my biggest lesson that I've had to learn, and what as a 22-year-old when you first met me, I was like not very good at is control what you can control and don't worry about what you can't control. And I used to think that my locus of control was very like I could control everything. Like and I was like so ability to change everything. And I think as I've gotten older, I've learned that I've almost taken more of an Eastern approach with like
Stoicism.
yeah, stoicism and like realizing like, oh my God, the universe is so massive and there's so much that I'm just like one tiny speck in this.
Insignificant. Yeah, like the
Yeah.
concept of insignificance, right? I think it's called something. I forgot what it's called, but it's like
Yeah.
realizing how insignificant you are makes even your problem seem insignificant, right? Or small.
Exactly. And so kind of taking this like approach of like you had said, the bird's eye view of like taking a step back and just putting like in that practice of putting things into perspective. And also like you had talked about examples of like, people applying to their trying to switch into a new job or applying to jobs or, I think there's so much that's out of your control, especially in this economy, in this market. And there's so much that's out of your control with your background and history of like how and what a company's looking for, especially now. Like a lot of companies are looking for very specific things with people with specific experiences. And I think just focus on what you can control, putting yourself in the rooms, like we had talked about at the beginning of this, like putting yourself in rooms or in experiences where you can try to maybe control that, but then you have to then be lucky sometimes about getting the right experiences and just kind of that continuous like iteration on just constantly doing that. Like, you had talked about, like, taking a machine learning course for something that was, like, not related to your problem, but that that is, like, one way that you can kinda control your future of, like, having that sort of skill that you can then use to get another role, or thinking about a problem in a different way because you have this background, or, so taking courses, or even just, like, networking with people, talking to people about something, or taking a risk on something, like, trying, like, one thing that I did in my early career that I was like, "I have no idea if this is a good thing," is I just would go to the, AWS, like, startup incubator space and just, like, talk to random founders there, and then I would, like, some of them I started working with for a few months, and I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing," but just getting, like, it's almost like those at bats, getting those experiences, putting yourself in these uncomfortable positions where you're like, "I have no idea what I'm doing," and I have imposter syndrome, but I'm like, it's growth in a way. Even if it doesn't, if you have no idea where it's gonna lead you, just having that growth, you might not know what door is ahead of you after that, and for me, that's just what I've found is the best way. And sometimes not even trying to be so calculating about, like, this is gonna lead me to this is gonna be this. It's just like, what's the next thing in front of me that I can do? And just, like, don't even worry about what's behind it, and just doing that, and then, like, going to bed, waking up the next day, and then being like, okay, maybe I'll figure out what's behind it.
Yeah, so like one step at a time or one day at a time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think you made some really good points. And I think one of the qualities, well, I don't know if I call it quality, it's because it really also stressed me out a lot because I used to think that I wanted to like conquer the whole world. I want to like just change the whole world. Yeah, absolutely. We all should think that way or feel that way and be empowered. But I think the way to get there is one step at a time, one day at a time. And I think that's what you're alluding to in the grand scheme of things. And with the energy and passion that we all have, and especially when we are in our prime time of our career, we think that we have to just change the whole world. And but that again starts with one step at a time, one decision at a time, one day at a time, right? So that, yeah, seems like that's great advice to wrap this up. Anything else that you wanted to say as any closing statements?
I was like, I hope that's great advice. Honestly, I don't know, because I think there's being the generational difference too is like, I have no idea what it's like having been in college or COVID was happening. So I think, yeah, just let us know how we can help you also, and share with, like, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with, like, advocating things to people that have power, or people that can help, like, tell us how we can help you. And I love mentoring people, and I'm, if I can help in any way, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, so two things. One is I think you made a very good point about just reaching out. I think like we need to know if we're trying to like create some change. We need to know from all of you listening what are things that you face, what are challenges you face. So those are things that you can post in the comments section about things that you face, things that you want us to talk about maybe in another future episode. It's not like we can talk for hours, as you know we have our infamous 4 hour long conversation. So we can keep going, guys. So just let us know what you want us to talk about, and we're happy to bring that up in another future episode. Corey is hopefully still going to be my best friend few months from now.
Honestly, that's, like, one of the most sure things I feel in my life of, like, we're gonna be, like, going on our trip next year, and
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
know that will be there. So,
yeah.
I'm happy to, this, as yeah, like I said, talking to you is one of my favorite things. So, whether it's recorded or not, I'm like, I don't know.
Same here. Talking to you is one of the most favorite things for me as well. And
You can just find me, my name Corey Salzer, on LinkedIn, and yeah, I might not respond immediately, but I do check somewhat frequently, and will, let me know that you were a listener of Priyanka's podcast, and I'll prioritize that when
yeah,
I
yeah,
fit.
because you have no choice. That's just
Yeah, that's one thing about my
friend,
relationship with Priyanka
friend.
too is
Yeah, she doesn't have much of a choice, but Thank you so much once again, Corey, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully, this was informational, and hopefully, this was something. There are things that you could take back into your life and maybe made you a little bit happier than your normal day, maybe cheered you up a little bit, hopefully. And I will see you again in our in future guest episode with another guest. But until then, thank you so much, Corey. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully, we'll see you again on another episode.
Sounds good.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.